Good evening, everybody. George and Max here from the Unqualified Filmbros podcast. We're continuing our breakdown and recap of every single MCU project leading into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, coming out next week, very shortly. Tonight, we're going to talk about WandaVision. So, kicking off phase 4 with an absolute bang. Welcome back to the Rewatch.
I love WandaVision. This is, the pandemic delaying certain projects aside, this was absolutely the right choice to kick off phase 4.
Mm-hmm.
You get two characters in Wanda and Vision who are so central to the events of late phase 2 and all of phase 3, but they're not really front and center for any of that. Vision is kind of a main focus of Infinity War, but they're ornamental to the Tony Starks and Steve Rogerses of the world. So I think putting these two front and center for the first miniseries that we've seen on Disney Plus from Marvel Studios is just such a strong creative choice by Marvel, because not only are you telling an absolutely wild story with, mind control of an entire town, television broadcast of sitcom tropes from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts, and so on, you're getting absolutely outstanding performances from Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany, which, to be able to traverse, again, all of those ideas from sitcoms past and then bring something new to their MCU characters on top of that, not only within the sitcoms that they pantomime, for lack of a better word, but towards the end of the show in the last 3 or 4 episodes, it's so layered and so packed with attention to detail and just absolute bonkers acting prowess that it's been the conversation on Twitter for over a year now. This film has won so many awards and been nominated for so many more, and yet that still feels like not enough. And just as I finish my opening rant here, Matt Shakman, remember the name. The guy has directed so many great projects. He's one of my favorite directors of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He's one of my favorite directors in the MCU, as you remember from the Eternals episode we did, talking about MCU directors. He was my number 3, I think. He's just able to weave together so many different elements of storytelling and so many different elements of filmmaking through a TV series that, I'm jealous as an amateur wannabe future filmmaker. Yeah, love WandaVision. I'm ready to end the episode right now. Not. Let's talk about it all night.
Okay, I'm down. So bear with us as we get hour 1 started of the next 12 at least. Buckle up. No, George, you hit the nail on the head. WandaVision is fantastic. And I think some of the criticism that I'll level at a number of these Marvel TV shows is that they're far easier binged together, like we will do for these TV series, than they are in the weekly release. I think
it was a heavy lift. It was a heavy lift to watch all 9 episodes of WandaVision today.
Yeah, it was a lot. And I will say, WandaVision, I think, is the exception. And I think it's because of how purposefully episodic each one felt. Obviously, different different time periods, different decades, starting in the 50s. But I also think it forced people to be patient. It forced people to actually pay attention to the details of the episode itself and not the series as a whole. Because with Marvel, we all know there's tons of Easter eggs, there's cameos, there's little things that you're gonna miss. And when you only have it was like 25, 30 minutes an episode for WandaVision coming out once a week.
Well, it built up over time, but it started out that short.
Yeah, it was pretty short.
I'm sorry, go on.
No, you're good. It like people had to focus on that like very granular details, and I think that made it so mystery-like, especially being the first project in Phase 4, where nobody had any idea where Marvel was going to take things after Endgame.
Yeah, I think one of the best parts of this series, as you just said, was the episodic nature and being able to let each episode sit for a week, mm-hmm. with the exception of 1 and 2, which premiered on the same day. But to be able to dive into the nitty-gritty, dive into the details each week makes the subtext of each episode, and as you said, the most granular details really come out to the forefront. Everyone's overanalyzing everything, and the intrigue of this series, you get the action-packed, good versus morally questionable in the Falcon and Winter Soldier. You get a really episodic feel in What If, until the very end when everyone was waiting for episodes 8 and 9. But we'll talk about What If in a few days. But with Hawkeye, Falcon Winter Soldier, these shows are, punch your way out of the situation, action adventure. With WandaVision, with Loki, which we'll talk about in a couple of days, the intrigue and knowing that they would eventually tie into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is why we're all doing this. Why the two of us have been with you for the last few weeks on this little side project. You got fans talking about everything about this. And that's what's so great about the Disney Plus shows, not only in the MCU. The Mandalorian has been huge for Star Wars to get people talking, get viewer numbers up as the bottom line. But driving the conversation wouldn't happen without quality content. And I think WandaVision is, as we've been saying for the last 7-8 minutes, it's the kind of thing that can drive that conversation because of how strong it is in every creative category and technical category.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is kind of brilliant, and it has worked out so far that Marvel ended up having to release WandaVision first. That it is it's a very cerebral show, to be honest. It's like you have to really think about it, mostly because you have to be patient with the first couple episodes as it picks up steam. And now going back, and every time I'll watch WandaVision again, I'll definitely appreciate the first few episodes more and more.
It's so rewatchable.
It's so rewatchable. Yeah.
And I think one of the best parts about those early episodes that you just mentioned is that fans of the classic TV series, I don't want to say parodying, because it's not really a parody, but using as reference, we'll say, mm-hmm. Fans of those shows from the 50s, 60s, 70s, they get talking about this because it's like, oh, did you hear about that? This is a real conversation I heard from one of my coworkers saying, oh, did you hear about one of my coworkers who is, older than I am, saying, oh, did you hear about that new Marvel show? I've never seen any of them, but they're looking at shows from the 50s and 60s. And it's like, that's great that you're talking about this, that you're going to watch it, because you get to see how great the Marvel Cinematic Universe is through a lens that you know. And that's a great way to dive in. You know, obviously I recommend watching everything that's come before, but if you're diving in with WandaVision, yeah, you won't really understand the grief, which is a huge, huge part of the story is Wanda's grief. But you're still going to follow the series and understand what's going on just because you know those references, you know what the show more or less is about. And then you get to know the characters and the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we could talk about WandaVision for hours. We've already made that joke tonight.
And we've done it for hours in the past.
That is true. That is true. So I think we'll end with some rankings and ratings. George?
Yeah, this one's going to be pretty high. It was already pretty high, and it raised after binging the entire show. I'm going to put this 7th in the MCU out of the 32 projects, firmly top 10. You know, all of the theories, like Mephisto's in this, and you know, Agatha Harkness, finally getting revealed. Catherine Hahn, what a performance! All of the intros, the music in the intros, which we were talking about before we started recording, absolutely slap. The commercial breaks with the Easter eggs from previous and hopefully future MCU projects, Easter eggs from the show that hadn't happened yet. Yeah, firmly top 10 in the MCU. Number 7 for me, and I'm going to give it a 95 out of 100. High praise and a full recommendation.
Yeah, I will be very close to what you said, George. Also firmly top 10. It'll be 7 out of 32.
We matched.
We did match. Yeah, it's I mean, so well done, and so rewatchable. So I'm gonna give that a 93, a little bit lower, but still a really, really strong project. And we both loved it and recommend it. So that's going to do it for us tonight. We're going to come back at you tomorrow talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which will be, I think, a fun discussion. So
yeah, I'm excited for it.
Until then, see ya.
Good night.